Okay.
Hi, Nikki. Hello. I haven't seen you for ages on YouTube. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Cool. Yeah, I'm loving all your wearing your best dress every day vibe recently.
It has to be done, even for the cleaning up nowadays.
But it's brilliant. I love it. Oh, Viva la Viva's here as well.
Hey.
Hi, honey. You okay?
I'm just trying to get my.
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, you don't want to see me? I've just walked in from work and my hair's all over the place.
Fair
Hold on. Hold on.
I always want to see you, Viva.
Hold on, darling. I'm just trying to.
We don't judge hair in this group. It's not that sort of group.
Oh, that's all right then. Oh, hi, Liz. Lizzie. One second. I'm sorry.
Okay, honey, don't worry. While you're doing that, we'll probably get started, shall we? Because we're a few minutes over 8.
Okay.
We'll just go for an hour tonight, if that's okay with you, Garrett, as well. And cool. Can I hear you again? Say something again. I didn't hear you again.
Don't worry, you'll hear me plenty.
Cool. Okay.
You're a bit faint, but
you're a bit faint. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yay.
Hey, Viva.
Hey.
So, yeah, obviously we're here with the lovely Garrett Kramer. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are quite a small group, but quite a few people watch the recordings afterwards as well in this closed book group. And who has finished? I mean, has everyone read the book or finished reading the book? I know that,
I haven't quite finished, but I've read it.
I know that Garrett's work has moved on a lot actually since this book as well. So I think that it's a beautiful piece of work, and I think it's been a really good springboard for lots of other stuff. And I think that probably where the conversation might end up going tonight is in a deeper, further direction possibly than the book itself. And I've also got a couple of questions from people who can't be here tonight but who want to watch the recording. So how it normally runs, Garrett, is that it's quite free flow and people just ask questions and we just sort of see where it takes us, really.
Right, let's go.
Let's go. Has anyone got anything they want to start with urgently or pressingly to ask?
Well,
Garrett?
I would like to start then with, because I was aware reading this book, Garrett, that you had said your thinking had already moved on a lot since you'd written it. So I was kind of reading it thinking, oh, I wonder if Garrett still thinks that, or I'm not sure about that. So I'd just be really interested to know kind of how you see this book now and what's kind of changed for you.
It's a strange question, Lizzie, because I don't really remember the book that.
Okay.
I mean, like I really don't. Yeah, it's crazy. Like but the way I would describe it, I think, is that it was just simply a step along the way. Valuable and necessary. And it was just a step. Yeah, it was just part of the journey of getting where the work is at today. That's about the best I could do. I think that I don't think the work has necessarily changed. I just think we've stripped away more layers. So when I say journey, I don't mean like a journey. I don't mean like a evolution. I would say more of the other way, more of a regression. That's the journey. So it's more stripping away, more getting to the core of it. And I would say the same thing from Still Power to that book. So the same thing. Yeah. And I had another book written which I scrapped.
Because you knew it wouldn't last for long.
Yeah, it was kind of mindset, and it was going to be a little longer than the book were talking about, and I just totally scrapped the whole thing.
So are you writing another book at all, or is that whole?
Just getting over the fact that I scrapped the whole thing. I'm trying to deal with that.
Okay.
Things are busy right now, and a lot of the articles, when you see me write an article every Tuesday, those articles, those posts, they'll form the basis of another book eventually, or they won't. But if they do, that's what you'll see on Tuesdays. That goes out to my email list, and I post them on social media too. So, yeah. As far as how the work has changed, I don't want to be evasive, but it's just gotten a lot less conceptual, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
A lot less conceptual, a lot less of an effort to try to fix people or even help people necessarily through their troubles. Just pointing those that I work with, speak to, write to, towards who they are, their true nature, and letting everything just kind of work from there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot less discussion about someone's thinking, feeling, that relationship. There wasn't a lot of personal in my work ever, but virtually none of that's existing now. So.
This could be a good point to ask. Well, Judy Walensky, who's a member of the group, wrote to me, and she's put, I don't know if this is articulate enough to even be something to ask. So it's not so much a question as something I think she just wants to hear you talk about. I'll just kind of read out what she said anyway. And she said, there are moments where there is nothing to add. Peace, calm, love, and allness. Then other moments when I pop out of this and I yearn to go deeper again, and I feel like I need to add to or strip away something. I guess this is being human. I'd love to hear Garrett talk more about this.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. That's perfectly said. And I think that the more we can see how normal that is, at least it looks this way to me, the more that we can see how normal that is, the less we fall for the lure of trying to fix when we're in that searching or seeking or resisting mode. Mm-hmm. So while the more we can see that that's just completely normal, as she said, the way it plays out is it looks less likely that we'll fall for it, fall for the lure of the ego that wants us to fix and search and resist and seek. That's why it's so important that we recognize how normal both of those perspectives are. Because if the second perspective is not normal, it would make perfect sense from that place to try to fix and cure. But since it's normal, and as we see that as a normal aspect of being human, as she says, then we don't fall for it. You can't fix what's not broken. You can't even fix what doesn't truly exist, because the second perspective is not an entity, it's simply an activity of the first perspective.
Oh, can you explain that a bit more? I feel like there are maybe one or two people on the call who are less familiar with this kind of language, who might be thinking, what? And actually I may be one of them.
Yeah, and we should never worry about using language that maybe someone would think, what? This is a good example, Lizzie. It's another lesson for us. It's very easy to pander to the audience and try to dumb it down, so to speak, for the audience. Mm-hmm. Use words and stuff that they'll understand, but that will go straight to the intellect and will bypass the heart. So the fact that you asked that question is important in itself. So if we want to go right for it as we see it, and then allow those types of questions that you just asked to follow. So not worry about someone not getting it, actually. Again, because it's a felt thing, it's not an intellect thing. And if we use words that will appeal to the intellect, we'll get nowhere. So it's very interesting the way you phrase that, because you just said, okay, I'm not quite, there's something there, but can we go a little deeper into it, which is cool. So if you look at those two perspectives, what was the person's name who asked?
Judy.
Okay. If you look at those two perspectives that Judy described, now there's a myriad of ways to explain them, to use the words used. We could use clarity and clutter, peace of mind, disquiet, something like that. Impersonal, personal, new self, separate self. They're all describing those two perspectives. Using the term the true self, another word for the true self would be consciousness, awareness. The religious term would be God's infinite being. Consciousness, let's stick with that word. Consciousness, in order to assume the form of limitation of you and me, of the separate self, consciousness must limit itself in order to create that second perspective, the separate self. So the separate self is an activity of the true self. So God's infinite being, the true self, has the power to assume the form of limitation of the separate self, of 7.5 billion separate selves, yet always remain as one. So the separate self, the second perspective that Judy mentioned, is simply an activity of the true self, a necessary activity of the true self. It's how the true self knows the world. It's how we're here. So it's certainly normal. By definition, the separate self will be jammed up, will be disquiet, will be insecure. By its very nature, that's what we are. What the activity of the separate self is, I should say. And that's why trying to fix that is the ultimate wild goose chase. You're fixing an activity, not an entity. So you can look at the activity like a whirlpool in a pond. You're just adding to the whirlpool. When we try to do things to get out of the whirlpool, we're just adding to the whirlpool. Now, in that book, I was pointing to this, but not quite as directly, not quite as on it as we are now. Mm-hmm. So just to review that. So Judy asked a question about it. Those two perspectives are normal, which they are. But it's more profound to see that the separate self is a necessary activity of the true self. It is how the true self knows itself in the world. The true self, God's infinite being, does not need anything to know itself as itself, but to know itself in the world, it must assume the form of limitation of you and me, so we can have conversations just like this.
So Nikki's asked a question that may follow on from that, which is, I don't know if you can see it. I'd really like Garrett to talk about, well, Nikki, why don't you ask your question? I'll unmute you. You unmute yourself.
There you go. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Garrett. I'm not sure if I phrased that question quite right, but I guess I'm really curious, probably because this is shaping how I coach. I don't even know whether I coach anymore, but yeah, I'm just really curious as to how you see this could shape the coaching industry, given the fact that we've got a whole massive, huge industry geared up to create change and, you know, to walk people towards change. And I suppose where this comes from for me is I've been working with people and really just see that it comes from them when they know who they really are. And it's so much more simpler than I ever believed it was. Yeah, so I'm just wondering how you see the coaching industry now.
So I think it's like this. If a coach or a teacher or a friend or a parent presents themselves, sees themselves as a separate entity, a bona fide, separate, personal entity, that coach, teacher, whatever, will approach their work from that perspective. Of course, that's how they see the world. Now, the issue with that is right off the bat, Nick, it sets up exactly what we're trying to avoid. The coaching you're starting from a place of separation. So here I am, I'm this coach, and I am going to teach this other person what I know to help that person. Two separate entities trying to come together. From that perspective, you're in duality, you're in separation, you're starting with division. That is a shot in the dark. As opposed to starting out with, okay, Nick, here we are sitting in this conversation. Who are we? Who are we? Start there. Only an experience of the being we share will endure. Only that. It cannot be anything but that. That is massive. That's a massive, that changed everything for me, what I just said. That, I don't know what I was doing for 25 years. It's embarrassing. However, as you just said, where we did move mountains is those moments where I was saying to a group yesterday, where I would say something along the lines of, you're no more bipolar than me. We're equally bipolar. Or we're not broken. It was always in that direction of what we share, who we are. It was never the other stuff. And over the last 5 or 7 years, that became more predominant. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where I was going. It's even hinted at in that book. I'm sure it is. But again, are we going to come at this from separation as the foundation? That's a crumbly foundation. That foundation will not stand. Or are we going to start from a place of what we truly are, what we truly share? That's the difference. And it's massive. They're not even on the same stratosphere. They shouldn't even be discussed on the same. They're not. It's night and day. That makes sense, Nick?
It does. It does to me, Garrett. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I've been talking about this a lot. And it's strange for people to hear because I'm a coach saying that.
Yeah.
I want to point you in a different direction other than coaching. There isn't the coaching that's the magic. It's the who we are and what we share in common that's the magic.
Why do you, just out of curiosity, why do you need to qualify that?
What do you mean by qualify?
You just said, I'm going to point you in a different direction, different than coaching. Why?
So I don't with all of my clients. So I'm finding it really difficult. Well, different than before. I have 2/3 of my clients are just business leaders who actually are not interested in thought, and it's really they just love hearing this.
Well, nobody's interested in thought.
You know, and then I've got some clients who. I suppose it was the starting point that I started out with them, and I've changed. And so they happen to be coaches.
I see.
And you know, and so I've done a turnaround. I've done a U-turn, and so I'm saying something different than I was even saying 6 months ago.
Great.
You know, so I guess it's those particular clients. The others don't know any different. They're just, I show up, they show up, we show up.
Yeah. I think that one thing I will tell you, I don't think it's a leap though. So
Garrett, can I just interrupt you and ask if you can turn up your microphone slightly?
Sure, I'll just get closer. I don't even have a microphone. I don't know why.
Yeah, get a bit closer. Thank you.
I don't think it's that much of a leap. I have to, you have a brother in me. I was concerned about that too. But it's far more, it's simply, as I was saying, it's a regression. It's getting in front and getting in front some more. So we got in front of tools and techniques and methods with kind of a better sounding tool and technique and method, kind of. And it was better. And now we're really getting in front of it all from where we come from. I think that if that's not happening in the future, then we've stalled out. It won't, and we'll get in front of it some more. I don't think that we're going to, I think we're at the foundation, but I think we'll clean it up how we speak about it. You know, I think we're here to help each other kind of clean up how we point a little bit in our own way. So I don't think it's that much of a reach, Nick. I think it is quite good. We're not throwing out thought. I mean, thought is the way. Thought is the agent through which consciousness veils itself. Thought. That's how it's done. And that's always been the middleman. The question is, what is thought veiling? Is thought veiling 8 billion of us in our own heads, or is it veiling one of us creating the 8 billion of us? That's the question.
I love that, Garrett, and it's reminded me what's really probably underneath this is when it was thought, and you know that was where I really saw how things worked. People would easily come to me and ask me questions like, "How do I get clients?" and "How do I do this?" You know, and you can kind of talk about thought, and all that suddenly changed. And that's I'm not, you know, so now I'm saying that I'm not really interested in that question. I'm not really interested in how I get clients, because that isn't your real question. I know that isn't the real question that anyone's got.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not.
And yeah, it's not even close. No. It's not even close.
If any step into the personal will take this whole conversation right into the gutter. Any step on how, why,
Yeah.
wasting our breath. There's no discussion about that can be helpful. None.
Yeah, I agree.
You
And that's what I'm seeing, that we've still got this industry. So I'm really interested in looking how potentially, as we go deeper with this, that will change. This industry will change from how, you know, people selling coaching to get high value clients or big coaching packages to who are we? Who are we really?
Yeah, that's never been a world that we've lived in here. I just, the whole discussion is just, it's not up to us. So why would we even take, it's just a moot question. It's not, if someone walks in this door after this call, then consciousness has allowed that person to walk through the door. I mean, why would I even suggest that it was anything to do with me or anyone? It just doesn't make any sense. No logic in it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Francis.
Oh, Francis, can you unmute yourself, honey?
Okay, you got me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's two things, Garrett. Earlier on, you said it's not a journey, which resonates with me. But I also am curious about the evolutionary aspect of things. Two things down. One was a thing in your post today where you said outside time and space, all personal will falls away, or will fall away. Will fall away. I'm just curious about that. You know, as if it will happen or whatever. The other thing is that
No, Francis, let's stay on that. I'll forget.
Okay.
Go back to the words I talked about with for Judy's question, actually. The separate self and the true self. Who we are, and this activity of a separate self, of an ego. This activity we live in most of the time. The separate self requires time and space to survive. It needs time, the distance between events, and it needs space, the distance between objects, to survive. Okay. So the separate self needs other activities of consciousness, objects, and events to survive. From the perspective of the true self, there is only here and there is only now. So when we drop out of here and now, we fall into love. That's another word for the true self. That's what that post was about.
Okay.
So when we fall into love, there is no time, there is no space, there is only here, there is only now. It does. Yeah. I'm just curious because as well, I again, with respect to time, I came across a journal I was writing 28 years ago, something I did for a short while, and I let the answers come to me, and I'd ask a question about my problems or whatever, and I let this quiet voice come in. And the most curious thing is that what that voice said to me 28 years ago is what I'm now finding I understand. I didn't know what this was about, and I'm now understanding it, which seems, that's I suppose why I was talking about the evolutionary sense of
something in that things becoming clearer over time. But then I suppose we just go back to the fact that that's what it's about. It's about time and space in the separate world, and that's how it.
The 28 years is just a
It's just
it's a figment of the separate self.
Yeah.
It just yeah. I mean, it's obvious. We can't even put it to words. The intellect can try to explain what just happened, but I won't do a good job. But it's a felt. I don't think we have to explain.
No. Yeah. Sure.
And explaining it, we move away from it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Francis. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I have a question from Richard, which is more of a specific question, but he's asked, he wants to kind of hear you speaking about what to do when you're playing a sport and you get very, very nervous.
I don't have an answer for that. Sorry, Richard. I just have no answer for that question. And if someone asked me that question, which I suppose I've been asked that question, I suppose, yeah, there would be no answer that would come out of my mouth. Not even do nothing. That wouldn't be an answer either. It goes back to Judy's point and about it being completely normal. It's my role to remind the person who asked that question who they are, and the rest takes care of itself.
So can I kind of follow that up? Because I'm really curious, Garrett, because I think in the book you kind of maybe did get more of an answer, you were more into answering those kind of questions then. And it just what I'm curious about now is, I hear where you're coming from, this, just pointing people back to who they are. And yet you must, I assume, come across people when you start working with them who, are not looking for that kind of answer. That's totally, they're looking in totally a different direction. So I'm curious kind of how you approach that conversation.
Well, the conversation, Lizzie, is always something along the lines, can you help me with anxiety? Can you help me with nerves?
Yes.
Can you help my organization perform better, make more money or something? Can you help me win a major golf tournament, a championship, this kind of thing? That's I would say that used to be 95% of the inquiries. Now it's probably more like 70, but it's still the majority by a long shot. And the answer to that question, all those questions, can you, is always, I cannot help you with that. That's always the answer. Always. That even then, that was still the answer. Even when that book was written, even 20 years ago, that was the answer, actually. But that is absolutely, positively not what we do here. Now, why someone may come here or hire me, that's different. But as far as the work we do, that it is absolutely not about any of that. Now, I'm not saying that hasn't happened. That has happened. Those kind of things, organizations doing fine and winning championships, that's happened. And I love it when it happens. I'd be lying if I said I didn't really get into that, because it's cool. But it is always an investigation into the nature of who we are. Always. And if that is the course of events following our work or during our work, then that's cool. And if it's not, that's cool too. Some of our greatest stories, so to speak, have happened when someone came here to win a championship, and their life takes on a whole different course. It's been phenomenal, some of those stories too. So yeah, I'm really black and white about this. Back then, it seemed to me like, look, there's no integrity in chasing that, because I can't guarantee that. I can't promise that. So why would I start with that? But now it's far more poignant. It's totally like, it is just, there's only one thing to look at. There's only one place to explore. And it is an endless exploration, by the way. I mean, this call will be an hour. We could be here all day, easily. Easily. We never do an event. I never do an event. For those I work with, and I never do an event where we always have to stop the questions. We would go on forever. We never run out of yeah, the questions and the investigation is just phenomenally deep, as opposed to promising those things, teaching a method, a system, or whatever, going outward away from source. That will run away from us, but eventually it'll just peter out. Whereas an exploration inward to source, to who we are, it's absolutely infinite. It's infinite, of course it is. It will go on forever. So, yeah. I know it sounds strange, Lizzie, because, you know, a lot of people are familiar with my work, and when I say something like that, someone will say to me, wait a second, I know you work with this person. Like, that's what you worked on with him or her? And because they just see the result that's visible. But it's never never discussed. It's never even discussed during the tournament. Let's say it's a golfer. It's never even discussed during, if we happen to speak during the tournament. Like, literally, it's not discussed. If a player calls me in the middle of an event, we don't even talk about how they played that day. It never comes up.
Well, even for them, that's what I'm curious about. You see, I know that you know it's not the direction to look, but I'm just curious that people, you know, before they see that for themselves, might not realize that.
Oh, no, they see it very quickly. They see it so quickly. No one wants to rehash the day's events. It's just not how we work. No one wants to put their hand back in that fire, no matter what. It's not. And if they played well, they don't want to do it, leave it be. If they played crappy, they don't want to do it, leave it be. It's totally learned. That practice is absolutely learned. It is so unnatural. It's just not what athletes especially never want to go back. And the younger they are, the less they want to do it. That's why they hate game film. This is why they hate watching videos and game film. They don't want to go back to that event. It's a big chore for athletes to sit in a room and watch game film. Always. There's nothing good about it. Whether it was a good event, bad, they don't want to do it. And of course they don't. Yeah. So
just, you know, going back to Richard's question, which was, you know, oh, what do I do when I'm nervous playing golf or whatever it is? You know, if you had Richard in front of you, you just wouldn't even have that conversation, would you?
He wouldn't ask the question if he was in front of me. He wouldn't ask the question. Because the parameters are very clearly spelled out. And
say a bit more about that.
Well, they know that they know that I'm a teacher like all else. So someone comes here and I teach. you know, this idea of deep listening and all this stuff that just doesn't mean anything. That we don't. There's nothing to listen to. So we teach. Now, I'm not saying that the client doesn't speak. And I'm also not saying there may be a little bit in the beginning of, hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on? I suppose, but maybe 3 minutes. And then we get into work. I'm not going to spend the client's money talking about personal stuff. So it's very clear that I'm not here to listen to their tales of woe. So we're just teaching. So going back to Nikki's question about coaching and where it's going, perhaps, is the idea of listening is totally overblown in teaching and coaching. It's such the wrong focus. I mean, it's just crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. To try to listen deeply is just bonkers. It just doesn't make any, it just sounds good. It's one of those things that teachers like to say that sounds kind of cool, but hang with them, teach, be available, be supportive, show up, be yourself. That's it. Yeah, that's they'll know.
That reminds me of what I can never get this right, but what you said. I think Claire had asked you, what do you promise your clients if you don't promise them results? What do you promise them? And was it love, support, and a resolute point within?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Which, yeah.
Love, support, and resolute. Yeah. Yeah. A resolute point within. Yeah. It goes back to what Nikki and I were talking about it. Are we going to start from a place of two separate entities? From that perspective, then we really got to listen to each other. There's something to listen to. There's someone to listen to. From the perspective of one being, there's no one to listen to. There's nothing to listen to. There is no cause and effect. There is no why. It's just it's starting from the perspective of separation. Love is the realization that others are not others. So we point within. Yeah.
So Anna, I think maybe had a question. Can you unmute yourself, Anna? Go ahead. Oh.
Hi.
Anna, I think you're still muted.
There you go. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm just listening to what you're saying. So if that person, okay, I agree with you that there is this love and that there is the one and that there's no separation. But if the person you're talking to doesn't realize that, so they're in their head and they're busy, what do? Don't you try and reach out where they are? Isn't that where the gentleness of reaching, almost listening where they are and then bringing them to the realization, rather than, because I just feel some people really are not conscious yet, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, no one's conscious.
Because I agree with you. Pardon?
No human being is conscious.
No, not totally, but at least that realization.
Hang on. They're not conscious. Not totally.
Yeah.
No human being is conscious. It's not. No separate self is conscious. Not something that we are. As separate selves are human beings. We are consciousness. That's the
right.
as I said before, as the true self. But any notion that a person sitting on the other side of with you in your office or whatever, wherever you are,
Mm-hmm.
that you're any more conscious than them, no human being is conscious. And it is, and you have no power to make a human being conscious, because a human being cannot be conscious.
Right.
So now back to your question.
Go.
It is a common, especially in three principle world, to say meet the person where the person is. Meet them where they are. Okay. Now, it's not crazy, the statement. But what's a mistake is to think that requires effort on your part. Automatically, you will know this. It requires nothing except just hanging out, just teaching, just the person walking in the room. It's not something that needs to be focused on. Where that person is where you are. You are one. Know thyself. Know who you are. The rest will take care of itself. I use the example often of, let's say a 7-year-old walked in this room. Do I have to go through some routine or process to change the way I'm going to talk and be with a 7-year-old versus you? No, it's just going to happen based on me knowing who I am. It's just going to happen. I'm going to relate to that 7-year-old, hopefully, as I should, I guess, if there is a should. But you know what I mean. It's just an automatic thing that happens. It's not something I have to say, okay, remember where that 7-year-old is. She's not where you're at. Okay, let's dumb it down so we can No, we'll just do it. It's just going to happen so easily and fluently. And the less we care about it and try, the more fluently it will happen. As I said, it's the wrong focus. It's an outward focus, as opposed to who am I? Know thyself, which resonated with you. Everything, every question we could ever want to have answered, Anna, will be answered in who am I? There's not, it's the only question that needs answering. Everything else will flow without effort from there. It's crazy. Like, how simple can it be? So, I mean, it's fun. I agree with you. It's funny. It's like so funny. It's like, what were we doing all these years? No, you're still muted, honey. You're still muted.
Yeah, I get it. It's not up to us. It's not up to us.
Oh, that's even, that's better than even what I said right there.
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to put to Garrett? Jill, you're being very quiet. You're muted, honey. Unmute yourself. Hello.
I'm saying, are you unmuting me?
Oh no, I don't have the power. Only Lizzie has the power.
Garrett, what I'd like to ask you is, what happened to you to bring you to this radical change in your views? And so you were obviously chugging along, doing the thing, happily along, and then what was it that brought you to this big place that you're in?
The way it looks like to me, Gil, is, well, the truth of it is it just kind of started happening. And that's really the truth of it. But if you want me to probe a little deeper, what I would say is, it never made sense to me that a circumstance could not influence us. And it was our thinking instead. But even, let's just take the thinking part out of there. It never really added up to me that an event, a situation, a circumstance, my past, your past, whatever, could not influence us. Now, it didn't. But what didn't add up to me is, I always knew there was something about a circumstance or an event or an object that was questionable in itself. So what I'm saying is, if the event, if an object, if a person was a bona fide thing, a real separate entity that exists, then it never made total sense to me that couldn't affect me, another bona fide entity that exists. So if this was right, if the inside-out paradigm was on the right track, then there had to be something about that object or that event, other than the fact, well, it's a real thing, and you and I just see it differently because of thought, and it affects us differently. It just didn't make sense to me. It never did. So I started looking at that a little closer. And then what hit me was that that's just not true. You would see things like movies like The Matrix, which suggested that the world out there was simply a projection from the inside. And that made sense to me. And then it occurred to me that then I started to look at materialism and the fact that these objects don't exist separate from consciousness. And a simpler way to explain that, Gil, would be, outside of experience, this bottle can't exist. Outside of my experience, this bottle doesn't exist. Without me having an experience of this bottle doesn't exist. So this bottle's existence is dependent on consciousness or experience, however you want to say it. And that was really the change for me. So we were pointing to circumstances as they can affect us. But that's because the circumstances, the entity, they don't exist outside of us. And that's what did it. We had it wrong. We have it wrong. And that's when I was talking to Nikki earlier about, we're starting from separation. So the model in the inside-out world is, let's call it 8 billion separate human beings, entities, one world. And because of thought, we see that one world differently. It can't be. It has to be one entity one being. It's not even an entity. It's a being, one being. And because of thought, we see 8 billion different worlds, 8 billion different objects. That has to be. Now that added up. The reason another person's behavior, an object, an event, whatever, cannot hurt you is because it doesn't exist outside of you. That's it. That's when everything, I saw that, and it was, and then, because I respected him so much, I took a look at Sid's early work. And wouldn't you know it, this is exactly what he was saying. I was like, of course, I knew that's what I was going to find. Everything about the man was starting out as one, we are one, and then thought veils the one being, creating separation. That's everything about his early work. Somehow it got off kilter. I mean, that could happen. It's no one's fault. Everyone's doing the best they can. But so, yeah, that's pretty big, Gil. That was like, holy shit. Like, what? I knew. I'm not saying I knew something. It's just like, I think a lot of people have this sense. I think a lot of us have this sense that there's something about it that just doesn't add up. Separate realities. I don't know. It's not because looking at one world, one situation differently because of thought, creating separate realities. Everything's a separate reality. It's not really a thing. If not for thought, all we'd see is love. If not, take away thought, we'd see nothing. We'd see pure love. And there's some examples of this. One of my colleagues showed this, maybe some of you saw this cool video. I always point to this video of this guy set up a telescope in the middle of, I don't know, some city in Europe somewhere. I don't remember where it was. It was a telescope, one of these virtual reality telescopes. So if you look through it, you'd be right on the moon. And he had people, just random passersby, come and look through the telescope. And the reactions of every single person was virtually identical. Like, oh my God, this is so cool, oh my God. Everyone had the same reaction. Absence of thought, they saw the same thing. It was crazy. I mean, the reactions were identical. You're talking about little kids and old men and women and everyone was different, yet the reactions were pricelessly the same. And it was so interesting. So I think it's actually more interesting how similar we see the world, what that tells us. I think that's the key. Obviously, we're all downloaded from the same source. So we're going to see the world, our world, the same. So our worlds, Gil, if you and I went to the movies together, we would see two different movies. You're seeing your movie, I'm seeing mine, yet they'd be virtually identical. They have slight variations, obviously, thought. One being, thought veils the one being, creates separation, we see two different movies. But we see virtually the same movies because we're downloaded from the same source. This is why people that are close, it's phenomenal how they see the same thing. They read each other's minds. You type something on social media and then you get a message. I was just thinking of that. How's that? We're downloaded from the same source. So yeah, I mean, I'm giving you a long version of it, but it's pretty wild. Like, and what Sid was saying was not new. That's another thing that's a little bit of a myth, folklore. And that's a beautiful thing. That's how you know he's on it. That's how you know he was on it. Plato and Socrates and Jesus, and they're all saying the same thing. I and my Father are one. That wasn't Jesus's way of saying it's just him and God. It was, I am, all of us and my Father are one. It wasn't him. Of course, it was taken the wrong way, as he was just talking about himself. That's the last thing Jesus would have talked about, is himself. Makes no sense. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am, God's Christian name. It's all there. It's all there. Ali wrote a cool post today on Facebook about I am. You should read it. It's perfect. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been a wild couple of years. It's been wild. It's been full on, no breaks, and I'm loving every single second of it. I don't even want to take a break. So that's cool. Thanks, Gil.
Thank you, Garrett. I'm aware it's now 9:05, so
Very late. Very late.
Very late. We've had you for over an hour, so thank you very, very much.
Okay, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Garrett. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Garrett. Thank you so much.
Everybody. See you next time.
See you soon.
Bye for now.